Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart. I'm here to facilitate a conversation with my good friend and our host, Peter Scalzo. Welcome to today's episode. Kick us off today, Peter. I think you have the reins, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, so we just finished a series, and it was great. It was on the grief cycle and recovery and how it relates to the cancer journey. Thank you, Sean. And I was on vacation this past week and thinking about where the podcast is going, trajectory, and all that. And I think I'd like to start out by saying in the beginning of the podcast, which was 2 years ago, right? It's been over 2 years now. When we launched the podcast, I was thinking to myself, well, I'd like to do something that anyone might be interested in listening to it. In other words, whether you're a person of faith, not of faith, wherever your faith position is, it doesn't matter. I want to make this an interesting podcast for anyone. And yet, I think because we are Christ followers and we're so steeped into integrating Jesus Christ into everything that we do, we just veered over to a faith-based podcast, which is great because that's our interest, that's where we're at, and I think that's fine. And we haven't talked that much about, for instance, specific healing scriptures and specific instances where Jesus healed. And I thought to myself, as I, for instance, I spoke Monday night, I shared my recovery testimony, which shares a bit about my cancer journey in it. And someone came up to me afterwards and asked me if I had ever juiced. So that's a kind of a typical response that I'll get is I'll do a testimony about my cancer journey, and then someone will come up afterwards and give me some words of advice regarding the physical journey. Have I tried this? Have I gone to this clinic? Have I done that? And I'm in a good place right now in my physical journey, but I usually say something like, well, juicing I'm sure has a positive effect on the body, and anything that has a positive effect when you're going through cancer is a good thing. To eat right and to put the right stuff into your body, that's a good thing. But I also mentioned that there's not one silver bullet in this journey, and that cancer is such a complex disease. One immunotherapy doesn't work for all cancers, and it doesn't even work the same for each person.
We were just having this conversation with Tabor, my son, and before our episode, and he thought that there's no silver bullet was one of the It was something that had showed up in his Spotify, and so he listened to it, and I do remember that too. I thought that was an episode that sticks out for me also because I think it's important. Yeah, this message of your own journey.
Yeah, so I mention it here to say that in the same way, I find Christians will approach illness. There will be a particular view that a person has. Say a prayer this way, claim these scriptures. No, the pendulum all the way from God wants you healed, and are you standing in the way of that healing, all the way to, well, we live in a broken world. I'm not sure God is a part of your healing process, but or the body heals itself kind of thing. And it's the spectrum, right, within the Christian faith. And I thought it would be interesting to journey into some of the scriptures themselves where Jesus healed, and to talk about the strategies or the ways that he healed, and how does it apply to our lives today. I am an unapologetically Christ follower, so that's how I approach all this stuff. And so I thought, well, why not? Let's go into specific healing scriptures, where Jesus healed, and just talk about the scene and what's going on, all that stuff. So anyway, I mentioned
sounds like
one.
fun. Yeah, I'm interested. And for the reasons that you put out there, and I was thinking about as you just shared this. Have you juiced? Well, it was just what do I feel about that inside? Like it's literally exploring my own feelings and what does my body tell me when I hear that. Have you juiced comment? I'm going to ask you, hey, how did you feel? Because you gave a very mature response. And I wanted to give an immature response. And it's like, dude, have you ever tried LSD? Because I mean, you just have in a mocking conversation or something like that. But you gave a mature response. So what did you feel when you heard "Have you juiced"? And then maybe we can go down to why.
In 20 years, I've learned eventually not to be defensive as best I can. There was one instance where someone who I'd known and pretty well, and a Christian person, and they were like, they saw me and they made this dramatic gesture like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't told you about this individual who is healing people like crazy from cancer. And I didn't let that one slide by. I actually said something to him like, do you understand how that makes a cancer patient feel? Like somehow they're failing, they're doing the wrong thing. I said, it's not the right message or the right method to go to a person who's struggling with cancer and say, sorry, but you missed the boat. You should have been over here. And sometimes I feel that way, not just with the medical kind of stuff, but also the spiritual stuff.
I was going to go even completely different than that a little bit because we're on the same page. I want we will go to the spiritual, we always do. And I was thinking about this, what in our human nature makes us this way. And I was, that I worked for a Wall Street bank, and it was in the trading space. And so I get a lot of times I'll get people who will come up and tell me about, they have this investment. They're like, I'm going to turn into a day trader because I'm so good. And I'm going to go, not me personally, but them. They have this idea that they will go into day trading because they have this trading strategy and they can see that they're going to quit their jobs and they are going to be really good traders. And they have all these ideas about how they are smarter than the market and the wise. And the number of times I've heard this, I've gone, oh my gosh. Oh, okay. And then how do I respond to them? Because they want me to engage with them on this. Like, hey, isn't this such a great thing? And generally I have a spiel of like, yes. And the number of times I've seen this story and then I've talked to the person 5 years later and they blew up is through the roof. And so are you the exception? Right. But are you going to gamble everything here as to that you have this? And there's something about the human nature of almost to a person. It's like, it's not that there's not money to be made in the market. There is. The same way in the medical, it's not that there's not things that you shouldn't do and should do in the medical world, or what you just described as eating healthily. There are, but nearly to a person, it's the idea that they can get rich by some kind of superior understanding of the market, and to do that very quickly. And it's this something inside of us that is, I'm going to beat the system. I have how to beat the system. Yeah. And I think in the cancer world, there is that also. Yes. Like the medical community, it's medical. It's doesn't understand this for whatever the pharmas have blocked it, or, governments regulations have stopped it. But there's this, yes, I have this superior understanding of this method that's going to now work. It beats cancer. And similar to you, after 20 years on this journey and knowing a lot of people, I've seen people pass from and have done every kind of alternatives, traveling to Mexico, Gershon Clinic, all the way down, and, including the traditional medical route. And, I mean, the bottom line is that people pass from cancer. And so I think that's the
so now I didn't want to focus so much on that part of it, the medical part, but sort of now on how Christ healed, and sort of the spiritual aspect of this is,
It's a good place. The reason why I wanted to bring this is, I wanted to bring this part of human nature that wants to say, inside of us, we can beat the odds. We have an answer, and if we apply that answer, and so as we explore these stories a bit, I think it's going to be great to see how the people in the stories approached Jesus with their need,
right,
and how they were interacting versus what I think I see in human nature and in the people that you've interacted with. Just comparing and contrasting a bit will be an interesting part of this.
Yeah, and I thought instead of the 30,000 feet, we would get down and read the actual scene.
Let's read the scene.
Yeah, you want to do that?
Let's do one
like
here.
The first, and I was watching the Chosen miniseries, which I think is a great miniseries, but they did a great job with this particular healing miracle, and I was impressed by it. So you want to read it?
Yeah, it shows up in this one here that you mentioned to me is the healing of the leper, and I believe it shows up in the 3 of the Gospels, and I'll read from Mark just because it's the first one on my list here, and this is out of the ESV. And a leper came, so this is it's Mark 1:40 through 45, so there's 5 verses here. And a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, "If you can make me clean." Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, "I will be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. And Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once, and said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for proof to them." But he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter.
Yeah. That's an interesting, I think, translation of that, because I know other translations like NIV and New Living Translation and gets more into Jesus, are you willing?
Yeah, I think I read that wrong. Let me just read that part, because I think I somehow my mind skipped over it. And kneeling said to him, "If you will, you can make me clean." That's the way the ESV interprets it.
Yeah, so not if you can, but if you will.
If you will, you can make me clean. That's the way they wrote it. So
so it's this concept of this, because a lot of times I think, for instance, I think you may have been around me one time when people prayed over me in a recovery. I had some issues going on physically, and so I asked a number of people to come and pray for me and over me, and one of the individuals said, "Do you believe God can do this?"
Mm-hmm.
And that person was getting at, did I have the requisite faith to release the power to be healed from Jesus, kind of thing, right? So that's where they were coming at it from. That was their perspective on healing.
Would you say that was their key ingredient?
I think so.
I think this is why it's for making a healing stew.
Yeah.
What are your key ingredients that you put into the mix? And so
that's good. Yeah, that's exactly, that's great. Like if I was making a healing stew, what do I think are the main ingredients? And for this person, it was, did I have the right kind of faith at that moment? Right. And my personal experience with healing, I did experience a miraculous healing. My doctor said it was a miraculous healing, and it was that event in 2017. In 2017, I was in a hospital. They sent me home to go on disability. Tumors the size of a baseball inside, all that. They said, we're done. And yet I started on this brand new immunotherapy drug. It's the only thing I qualified for. It didn't have FDA approval yet, but they put me on it. And I, after so many months and receiving the immunotherapy infusions every 3 weeks, you know the scene. I'm in his office. He sticks the scope, and it's just me and him in this office. All the big screen, the lights are turned down, and the scope goes in, and he yells, "The tumor is gone," at the top of his lungs, as loud as he can. And I have my head I have my arms crossed with my head in there, and I'm looking up at the screen, and because I've seen it before, the tumor looked like a mushroom attached to the bladder wall, and it was gone, and it was just kind of red there in that place, and so I said to him, "Wow, immunotherapy," and my Catholic surgeon said, "Immunotherapy, nothing. This is God." And so it's interesting because I, of course, was a Christ follower and committed and surrendered and enjoying a great relationship with the Lord and expecting to go home. I was expecting to pass and go to heaven. But I wasn't in this place of, I've got the right kind of faith, Jesus. Now I expect to be healed. I expect you to do this thing. In fact, that response of the tumor being gone, was as much of a surprise to me as it was to the doctor.
Yeah.
And so, of course, like this person who asked me later on, do I believe that God can do this? It's like, man, after 20 years, God can do I've seen him do unbelievable things. And I've even seen him do unbelievable things when he takes people home to be with him. So, but anyway, I kind of, so here's this man, right? And he seeks out Jesus. He seeks him out. He walks up to him. And I think this was early on in Jesus' ministry, because he says, don't tell anyone. I don't think, Jesus always had places in the timeline where he wanted to be public, and he didn't at other times want it to be public yet.
Yeah.
I think, because when people found out he's a miracle worker and all that, of course he's going to have a huge throng following him. And so this guy comes up to him, a leper. I mean, think about how that person was completely removed from the society, from community, the culture, besides the pain and suffering physically, but just being a social outcast, right? Being completely rejected.
Right. For in that period of time,
yes,
a leper was not even allowed to be within so many feet of somebody who was viewed as clean, and so they were supposed to go around calling out unclean, so that people would not get near them.
Yeah.
And I like the way the Chosen, as you described it, I haven't seen that scene yet, but the way the Chosen lays it out is that Jesus sees him, and everybody's like, stay back, and Jesus approaches the leper.
In the Chosen, the disciples traveling with Jesus scream out, and they're fearful. You can just look at their eyes, and they're like, don't come near us, don't breathe his air, and they're staying back, and they're like, no one go near him. And Jesus approaches this man who's down on his knees, and they're like, Jesus, what are you doing? So
that's at the ground level. There's so many interesting parts to this story, including Jesus' instructions to him, which it has its own fascinating aspects, because you have this person who, I think, is, if we think about what's in the stew, they're approaching Jesus, I guess, with hope. Is hope in the stew, because there's some hope that Jesus has an answer for their problem, and then an ask for willingness.
Well, think about like biblical hope we talked about. There's like an expectation that something will happen, not so much wishful.
Yeah.
And hope in general, we use as, hey, I hope my team's going to win tonight. We're not sure. And this man seems to know something about Jesus. I mean, he says, if you are willing, that's how one of the translations says it, you can heal me and make me whole.
I think I'm interested in a lot of the aspects of the ground level for this for a few reasons. And I think for purposes of this podcast, I just read a great message from one of our staff that they're going to give here in a few weeks. And he wrote it in the context of, we do ministry to disabilities, special needs community here. And so we have all kinds of things that are happening. And, but the point is that a lot of our outreach is focused and pointed at walking alongside the special needs community. And part of his share was, hey, we are all special needs in some manner. We have to recognize that. But if I compare that in contrast, one of the key messages he had for the discussion was that nobody who has a special need who is an accident, none of that was an accident. It was by design. And so at the ground level, there is brokenness in individuals and our purpose, who we are, that disability as viewed is actually bringing something that is not by design is more important than what is viewed as a defect by in our from a human lens is a lot of times it's viewed as a defect. And his whole point was that because you're only looking at the externals, but what God has done is built and designed somebody to share something really important with the world. There's something really special that this person is gifted with, that they're carrying with them. And if we approach the world with that perspective, it's going to change the way we interact with the person. And that's when I hear this person walk up and say, hey, have you tried juicing? It's immediately looking past that which is important and getting focused on, I have an answer for you for something that I think is a defect in you. That maybe if you would try my answer, it would cure your defect.
Yeah.
And I really liked this perspective of what he was giving. It's like the way you should be approaching the world is this person's bringing something really important. And this journey is not a mistake. Whatever is happening here, the reason why this person either has a disability, a special need, cancer, we should explore that as what's really important before we even get to something along the lines of that you need to have that defect cured.
Right.
And so I was thinking about that in light of Jesus approaching this person.
Yeah.
It's like Jesus wasn't looking at this man as defective. And that's why this chosen scene then sticks out to me, is that he didn't see the defect first. He saw something greater at the ground level. He walked towards this person, understanding that there was something bigger in this scene than his leprosy.
Yeah. I mean, Sean, it's a great point. I've always been impressed by, in my own journey with this cancer struggle that I've had for these many years is, God, what's one of the main ingredients for my stew as I go through this? Mm-hmm. And it was overwhelming that the issue for me was it's not so much about physical healing. In fact, the phrase I had was, I'm going to pray for physical healing for this person, but then I'm going to put healing on a shelf because that's not mine to do. But the real main thrust for me was, how does God want to transform me in this journey? Or how does God want to transform this individual who's been diagnosed in this journey? So yeah, it's more about, it's not so much the focus about everything should be poured into how do I get physically healed. And, I just want to make the point about.
Can I highlight your point?
Yeah, please.
Because it's just added to what you have to say, but it's in this passage. What if I were to restate what the lepers say? Because it says, if you will. What is it you will? Like you're starting with, the leper's question here was, what's your will?
Yeah, right.
And so, and you're describing the very similar thing is like if your focus now, as you look at your own stew and what it meant to be on there is, I want to set this on the shelf for the moment
Right.
and get focused. Start here is what's God's will.
Right.
And if I start there, it's a better. It appears that Jesus's heart was moved by this person, and their starting point was, "What's your will?"
Yeah. I mean, if you are willing, right? What's God's will? We're going to explore a bunch of these healing events in Scripture, but there's times that the individual, whether a blind man who doesn't even know who healed him,
Yeah.
to other people who had no understanding of really who Jesus was, all the way to where Jesus says, "Your faith has made you well." That's the phrase.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the one we like to latch on to because I must be able to do something here, right?
Yeah. So there's this this is what I'm getting at. There's this wide spectrum that even Scripture has in the way that Jesus does these healings. And I think that's what I want to explore. I think I do think that in the Scripture, it's clear that Jesus is ushering in something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up on the scene after the Old Testament period, the 400-year intertestamental period, and then Jesus shows up. And he's there, he says it, to usher in a spiritual kingdom. And he launches a whole thing with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So there's this concept of dependence and need on him. So I think these miracles are pointing out that he is the Son of God. He is God in the flesh. And he validates and proves that by these miracles. But in these individual stories, there's a great interaction going on. And I was with somebody Sunday in the cancer support group who told me after it's been a long cancer journey and it's turned metastatic. And she said, "I don't think I've ever asked God to heal me." That was her perspective. See, I run into all different perspectives within Christians. And she said, "Well, if that's something that'll bring God glory and he wants to do, fine. I'm content with that, but I've never asked him to heal me." And I said to her, "Would you let me pray for that now? Can I just ask Jesus right now that for healing for you? I have no power in that, but I just want to ask him right now. If that's something you've never done, I'm going to ask for that because I'd like to see that. I know he's done a great work in your life through this, but I'm asking for that." And I pray a lot of times over people for healing from cancer, but that's not my focus. My focus is, what is God doing in your life? How are you being transformed by this journey?
What's his will for you?
Yeah, I mean, if you are willing.
Yeah.
And there's other, as you know, healing miracles in Scripture where the person who comes to him, they're very humble. They're recognizing there's something greater here, and that's this Jesus person. I don't fully understand him, but there's something greater here.
Yeah, I think for today's episode, this idea of sticking in this space of God's willingness is important. And I think one of the reasons why I like this particular story as a kickoff, because it's very clear that that's the ask up front. But I also find it fascinating that he's given a command that he disobeys. And I just thinking about, well...
Oh, you mean the man does?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's told not to say anything.
He's told to keep it quiet, go to the temple and walk through this. But he tells everybody anyway. And I had to think that, and I might be wrong about this because Jesus had humanity, but that Jesus already knew all of this, and yet he still healed him, his will, even though he knew that the guy was going to disobey him. And I think there's something to that. It's like, well, if Jesus knew that he was going to disobey what he asked, and he heals him anyway, it does something to the statement about, is obedience the key ingredient in the stew?
Yeah.
Because I just think that Jesus already knew that he was, and so this is written for us, not for this man. It was written for us, those who check the gospel out later on and sees that Jesus tells this person to do a certain thing, and it's written that in the gospel the guy does the opposite, and we don't see that he's punished. We don't see that his healing's taken away. None of that. We saw Jesus had, the words were compassion, or he had, just great care for this person.
Yeah.
And so obedience is something that wasn't part of this equation, wasn't part of the stew. Is a fascinating aspect here.
Yeah, there's this story. Yes, obedience. Yes, that's a great point. And I was just kind of latching on to the word compassion. There's this widow. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, Nain. And she's in this funeral procession with her son. And anyway, he raises the son back to life. But there's this, in the original language, there's this guttural response Jesus has of compassion. It's like he doesn't have control over this. It's just like compassion bubbles out of him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that that's a wonderful view of our Lord, that compassion just bubbles out of him.
Yeah, I think as you were speaking to right before that, when you shared this, but it really brought me to where Jesus read Isaiah 61 that defined his ministry. And so, and I'll highlight this again. It said, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And he stops there. Now, the next line in Isaiah would have been, and the day of vengeance of our God. But he doesn't read that part. When he describes his ministry, he reads all this ministry of mercy and care and compassion to describe his ministry at that point. Yeah. And so we're in that window with God, I think, still, where if we point to his heart, we know that God's heart has compassion, the binding up of whatever is breaking our hearts, because we're living in a world that's at war, and there's a lot that's happening where people are being held captive in prison. And so if one is not healed, it's not because this isn't true. It must be that whatever is that's part of this journey is still accomplishing one of those purposes.
Right. And I think that's a wonderful perspective on it. So many times I've prayed for people who have passed, but God had a great purpose in the whole process. And sometimes we don't know, I mean, it's a mystery, right? And we won't know things until we're with him.
Yeah, I actually want to explore that as we do this journey, is when God says no. Yeah. And look at the, what's behind that, because you do see so much of when he is asked that there's something that we'll talk about. One of the miracles that I think is really fascinating is going to be the woman who comes and she's asking for her daughter. Yes. And Jesus tells her no twice. Yeah. And so I'm really excited about that story.
Let's do that next.
Because it's an interesting thing that because we're talking about the stew. What about that interaction moved Jesus as God's Son, as part of the Trinity, to move from no twice to yes? It will be an interesting story. So I think these are interesting things to think about as to what it is, how we approach God, and what is God's heart in this.
I think that's a great example too of what's going on in her heart as he says no.
Yeah.
But and also the pool, and I just forgot the word, but where they waited for the water to stir.
Yeah.
And this is the only point I'm making is he walked by a whole bunch of people and only healed that one man in that area. There's times where it says Jesus healed all the people that came out who were sick, right? With evil spirits, all that. In this particular instance, he only healed the one. So sometimes I was at a volunteer cancer place that's a large cancer. It's like where people can go to get support. And I was meeting with the director, and she asked me for my story. So I told her my story. I gave her a copy of my book, all that. And she said, well, what about the people who don't get? Because I talked to her about how I had this example where immunotherapy and I had this miraculous kind of healing. Mm-hmm. She said, well, what about all the people that don't get healed? And, how do I speak to them? And I told her, I sit in the dirt with them. But it's an interesting discussion as a Christian. Do you feel like Jesus is walking by you and laying his hands on this person, but not you, for that physical healing? And how does that make you feel?
Well, this is those who have the formula in the stew that they have their guaranteed answer, they're going to struggle with one part of the question. Mm-hmm. And it's, you can get focused on cancer, mm-hmm. but let's talk about life. Mm. To my knowledge, in our current time, the death rate is 100%.
Yeah.
Nobody avoids the fact that, and there's not been a cure for physical death. It doesn't mean that we don't have an answer still in our journey in faith in Christ and what he's done for us on the cross. But our physical frailty is going to capture every single one of us. And there's no silver bullet. There's no magic answer.
Right.
There might be a difference in time we can talk about, but all of us are slated to go to succumb to physical frailty, no matter what juice, what diet, what exercise, you name it. And so I say that not to be, as much as I am to recognize that at some point we all are going to have to sit in that dirt. And I mean the dirt of loss of those around us, mm-hmm. and the dirt of our own loss.
Right.
In one sense. And I think that helps to define a bit of what we're talking about here is God's timing is his timing for everyone. And mm-hmm. so I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine this morning, and there was a discussion of whether I grieved my mom's passing of lung cancer at the age of 47. And I thought, hey, I'm already 10 years older than she was when she passed. And is it fair that I've got 10 more years than she did now in life? And what does it mean to die at 47 from cancer? In one sense, is it, and I don't know that that's the right way to look at it, as much as looking at the whole of her life and understanding that even the 47 years was a gift. Mm-hmm. It was, and her existence isn't gone. It's changed. And so it's, as we start measuring things a little bit, I think we can lose sight of the gift of even the preciousness of the now.
Right.
And I think it's going back to, well, what was God's will? Mm-hmm. And giving that gift of 47 years. And for me, the gift of 57 to this date. Mm-hmm. Do I deserve more? I don't know. It's not about deserving as much as I don't know what that gift is going to be, whether it's going to be today or tomorrow. And so it changes the perspective once I recognize it as a gift and not, I'm owed something, or how do you answer somebody who doesn't get the same gift as you do? It's
well, and like Christians will point out I'm guaranteed the 72 years because of the Old Testament verse. And you know what I mean? And if I don't make it to the 72 years, was that a failure? And, I was in the hospital at age 53 with a end-of-life diagnosis, and I had to wrestle with that issue of, dying relatively young. How about children? But I think you're right. What I did was a gratitude list, and I saw the fullness of my life experiences up to that point and thought, man, I'm ready if I have to go. I'm ready.
So I want to approach one more question before we, because I think we're going to wrap out of time here, but we probably already have. But it is, you've accepted something from a statement, and I'm curious what's true and maybe or the why. And as you've described your healing as a miracle, because a doctor who looked at there said, immunotherapy, nothing. This is a miracle. In your mind. Why is it a miracle? And because I have a sense that there's like, well, yeah, you got a medical healing, Peter. Immunotherapy did this, and how do you reconcile that in your own world? Because we're talking about miracles, and there's something about this that you define as miraculous. And not because there's a challenge here, but more an understanding of, hey, you're approaching this from a certain perspective for a reason, as we're talking about a series on miracles and at the ground level. I'm actually interested in the ground that you're walking on.
It's valid. I mean, because it's not like I had this prayer and then suddenly the cancer disappeared. There was a medical intervention, right? So there was something used that I believe God had revealed to scientists, was this immunotherapy. How do we harness the body's own immune system? And I consider that to be, wow, God had revealed that to them. The secularist doesn't. They believe, or the atheist, they believe man is evolving. I like to think of it more that he has revealed this knowledge to the scientists. But I think even now, the type of cancer cell I had is an aggressive cancer cell. And even now they would consider it to be highly unusual, an anomaly for that treatment to have basically dissolved the cancer in my body at that point. And then usually the efficacy of these treatments is for a few years maybe, and then it comes back. I mean, it's a very, this cancer cell is particularly smart, aggressive. It adapts, it mutates, it does all these things. And I haven't, I'm still living. And now 20 years into this journey and now 10 years into metastatic high-grade urothelial. So they are, I'm sure there are other people who are in my place, but I don't think there's many. So they call me an anomaly. Medically, and also the quality of my life is pretty good. I mean, I'm still pretty strong. I can still do things and get around and all. It's not like I'm physically where I can't move and stuff. So I just think I think that God first of all revealed this knowledge. It just so happens the more they dig into my DNA and my genetics and all that, not so much genetics, but just the genome, DNA, all that stuff, they're finding out that for some reason this therapy worked really well with my body. So with the way my body's made up cell-wise, this particular therapy was like the answer. But we didn't know all that back then. We didn't know any of it.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. When we think about, we use this term, the miracle of life.
Yeah.
And one could be flippant about that and say, well, hey, I can scientifically explain so much. But I would also say from my own faith journey, there's too many coincidences.
Yeah.
And for your own healing journey, there's too many coincidences.
Right.
The timing, and your own purpose and what God's done with that speaks to something that is God's hand in it. Yeah. I think it's really what I hear you expressing in everything.
Yeah. And I know so many people with the same diagnosis. Everyone I knew is not here with us any longer. So,
and I think I think I hear you saying is that you are recognizing God's hand in all of this, and He used different tools and resources. But the same way that one can say that someone who was born is still a miracle of life, even though you might say, "Well, I know all the mechanics that went into this with sperm and egg and all this to say how it happened," but each life is a miracle. It's a gift from God, and His hand is in each one of us.
Yeah, that's right. And like when Jesus heals, we're going to see puts mud on some. He does it in different ways.
Yes, yeah. This will be a fun series for us to talk about. So I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully you've enjoyed some of our banter to start out with, just exploring this first story, and more to come. But thanks for listening.
Yep, blessings.